please welcome to the stage Camille Brown and Cherise Gomez.
Thank you, Essence, for that wonderful introduction. So happy to be here with everybody tonight and beautiful crowd. Thank you all so much for joining us. Camille, I am so excited to talk to you about your journey and what it really means to be a curator and having the eye for art. And with all of these discussions, I love to start with your journey at the beginning. And when I talk to you, before this, I'm interested in little Camille, baby Camille, and tell us all about her. I know you have roots right here in the DMV, and we talked a little bit about what your roots bring to culturally, what that brings to your eye. So tell us about your start. Where were you born? Where were you raised? Tell us more about that.
Absolutely. So I was born not too far from here in Bowie, Maryland, but I grew up and spent most of my life in New Orleans, Louisiana, which I consider home. Little Camille was a little introverted, but I was always kind of drawn to the arts. I like to read, I like television, and so I was always kind of interested in narratives and storytelling from a really, really young age.
And that storytelling and the arts, tell us more about what piqued your interest and how you started to develop that interest.
So I'm not someone who knew what I wanted to do my entire life. When I was a kid, I was not someone that was like racing to the museums. In school, I was drawn to English and writing and reading and history, and so I went to college and studied history. But it wasn't until later that I came to recognize that the arts was something that I could work in.
So important. And one thing I like to talk to a lot of our artists about is their home life. So I know your parents had an interest in art and you grew up around it. So tell us more about that.
So my mom was a driving force in my family collecting art. She and my father both worked in DC, and so they were buying work from local artists when I was a kid, and so I kind of grew up around art without realizing that it was kind of making any sort of impact on me, but I think it absolutely was. One of the artists that they collected was a local artist named Joseph Holston, who is having an exhibition at the Katzen Gallery, I believe, at American University. And I was asked to write an essay on him, and so it felt like this kind of full circle moment of I grew up around this artist's work, and now I'm going to be able to engage with it as an adult, and so it felt really special to me.
Full circle, I would say, full circle experience. So what I'm interested in, and I'm sure our audience is interested in, is how did you develop your eye for art? You talk about being born here and calling New Orleans home, which those two places, Bowie, Maryland and New Orleans, I consider a cultural epicenter.
Yeah.
A lot of culture, a lot of good food, a lot of amazing people. Do you think your environment and the culture really shaped your current eye for art?
I think so. I mean, it's an interesting question because I don't, it's like each curator has a different eye. We have different tastes, and art is ultimately a subjective
Of course.
Media. And so I think for me, growing up in the South is something that's had a deep impact on me. And so I continually find myself, even when I'm looking at the permanent collection at the museum I work at, drawn to artists that are engaging with the Southern landscape or depicting the South. I find myself kind of coming back to that. I think growing up in New Orleans as a young Black kid or being a Black woman is also kind of feeding into my own practice and impacts the artists the way that I want to support artists and that kind of thing. Yeah.
So important, so important. So I'm going back in chronological order, going back to little Camille, who's becoming a young woman. So talk to us about internships, when you found out you wanted to jump on this path going to art, or how did you get on the path of going towards being a curator?
Yeah, so in my undergraduate studies, I studied history.
Okay.
And I didn't know what I wanted to do. My junior year of college, I took an internship at the World War II Museum, which is in New Orleans. And I worked in the archives department, so I was digitizing photographs taken during the 1940s, and I just fell in love with it. And so I kind of thought about the ways that I could engage with history through the lens of art. And I found that being able to contextualize art and the setting and the surroundings that it was created in was another way to learn about history. And so I graduated, I worked at in a school for a little bit, and then I went back and got my master's degree from New York University. And my focus was, it was a museum studies program, so thinking about museums more generally and holistically.
And in your time in New York being a great place for museums, DC being a great place in museums, one thing we talked about prior to this is, one thing I'm passionate about, and I know the Sitar Center is passionate about, is making sure everyone has access, no matter your socioeconomic background. You worked with the Met for a while. What was that experience like, and do you think everyone had the access that you had to work there? Sometimes you have to work for free, and we talked about this, and sometimes it's not fair and it's not accessible to everybody to work for free.
Absolutely. So the majority of internships that I took a few, I was an intern at the Met for a few months, were unpaid. And so it's a barrier as far as if you can't afford to work for free, then you can't gain the experience that you need to move forward in this career. And so it's changing. I think most internships at museums are paid. I will say to any young person, do not take an unpaid internship. You are doing work and you should be compensated for that. But it's been a gradual shift towards making working in the arts and kind of becoming a young arts professional more accessible. So it's slowly happening, but it certainly was. I mean, even a few years ago, I was interning in 2018, 2019, and it was not, it just wasn't there yet.
But you said there is progress.
Yes.
We are progressing, because I always like to ask the speakers, what is your advice to the young people who's like, you know what, I want to be Camille Brown when I grow up? What is your advice to them?
I mean, I think I would say that they should be them.
Like Camille Brown, yes.
But I think trying out a bunch of, if you're interested in working in a museum, trying out a bunch of different departments. And I would recommend that because, one, you're able to figure out what you like and what you dislike. And also, because it gives you a better understanding of how institutions work holistically. So when I was in graduate school, I think my first internship, I was working in development or fundraising, and I was just immediately like, I don't want to do this, but it was very helpful. It was very helpful in understanding how that department works. Like I've carried that experience through to today. So try a bunch of different things, apply for different internships. Even if you feel like, I know I want to work in this specific department or field, trying out new things is always helpful.
Being a Swiss Army knife,
yes,
if you will.
Exactly. I like that.
Very important.
Yes.
I learned that early on in my career. It's important to be a Swiss Army knife in almost everything. One thing I know you're interested in is demystifying what it means to be a curator. So, first of all, can you define for our audience what it is that you do and demystifying the true definition? Because sometimes, I mean, for me, I think about a curator and somebody who just has the ultimate eye for art, and they can curate a collection, and it sounds like the most amazing job, but I'm sure it's not as glamorous as I think it is.
Yes, I mean, it's a lot more administrative than people realize. It's very, there's a lot of like logistics involved in organizing an exhibition. So ultimately, my job is to conceptualize and develop and implement special exhibitions, sort of drawing from either the permanent collection or from other institutions, using loans from other institutions to build exhibitions. And so I view it as a kind of storytelling, but it's, I don't know, I think when you see curators depicted on TV or in movies, it's kind of just like pointing at art, and it's not really that. It's a lot of research, a lot of object-based research, but I've loved it. Yeah.
Love that, love that. And speaking of what you do on a daily basis, I'm so interested in how you build the rapport with living artists. So talk about how that process has been for you.
So it kind of depends. Sometimes I'll meet artists just because I'm interested in their practice. Sometimes I'll meet artists if the institution is interested in acquiring work from them. But I mean, it's the way you would build any kind of relationship. It develops over time, and you have to build trust. But a lot of it is kind of doing what we're doing here, which is I will ask them about about where they're from, about their practice, learn about the materials that they're using. I'll ask about projects that they're excited about, artists that they have been inspired by, just sort of trying to get a fuller understanding of them and what kind of place they're creating out of.
And you described that process, building a rapport, as heartwarming and inspiring. Tell us, I hate to put you on the spot, but tell us about one instance you can think of, a specific instance when you were building a relationship with an artist.
I mean, I think the first one that comes to mind is, it was one of the first projects that I worked at the Phillips Collection, which was Lou Stovall, the museum workshop. And Lou Stovall was a master printmaker based here in DC. And he was, the exhibition was about a center that he had created that brought artists together where they created and displayed work in the same space. And being able to meet him, and he was such an established and important artist, and being able to develop a connection with him, to ask him about his practice, to learn more about his work, was something that was so important and meaningful to me. And he passed away a while after the exhibition opened, but I just view that entire exhibition and process as like such a gift.
It's amazing. I feel like every day is a gift for you in your job, because I can see the passion in your eyes, and when you talk about the work that you're doing, that gives me goosebumps. I love seeing people talk so passionately about their work. So tell me about the exhibition, Pour, Tear, Carve, Material Possibilities in the collection.
Yeah, so that was the first exhibition that I co-curated. I co-curated it with the associate curator at the Phillips, Renee Maurer. And it was an exhibition that was drawn exclusively from the permanent collection. So the Phillips collection has a certain amount of works that it owns. And so I kind of, we built a story around works in the collection that focused on materiality. So the materials, so thinking about the materials that an artist uses in their work, how that shapes or impacts the story of that work of art. And we broke it up. It was a thematic exhibition, but it was probably like the largest scale exhibition that I had ever worked on at that point. And it was amazing. I was able to familiarize myself with the permanent collection. I was able to talk to and engage with some of the living artists who were shown in the exhibition, and it was fantastic. I loved it. Yeah.
Sounds amazing. Sounds amazing. So right now, what are you working on? Or what are your goals for the next 5 years, 10 years, and even further from that?
Absolutely. So I'm currently the coordinating curator for an exhibition on Alphonse Mucha that will open at the Phillips in the spring. But I am organizing an exhibition titled Essex Hemphill, Take Care of Your Blessings. And it's centered around an activist and poet named Essex Hemphill, who grew up here in DC. He published one book of prose and poetry called Ceremonies before he passed away of AIDS-related illness in 1995. And he was working alongside a lot of contemporary visual artists And then he has inspired an entire generation of younger artists. So the exhibition will be bringing all of those works together to kind of speak about his impact and influence. He was not someone that I had heard of. He's pretty well known within like the poetry community, but I'm excited to hopefully introduce him to a larger audience because his work is just, it's stunning, yeah.
It's amazing. And you talk about impact and influence. Does it ever resonate with you, the impact and influence your work is doing that can transcend just this moment, this month, this year, and decades beyond you?
I mean, I hope that it does in some small way, but I think as far as you asked what I see, where I see myself in 5 to 10 years, I've tried to, it's been hard, but I've tried to detach myself from thinking about a specific job title and just thinking more about the type of work that I want to be doing. So I want to be someone that is supporting living artists, and whether that be through an institution acquiring their work or providing them with space to show their work through special exhibitions. I think it's important for me to be mentoring younger people who want to work in this field. My path towards working as a curator has been paved with people who took time and energy that they did not have to spend time with me and to kind of work with me through things. So I want to be able to create that space for someone else. And I also just want to be telling interesting stories that reach a wide audience. So those are my main goals moving forward. So I hope I get somewhat close to that in a decade.
Mentorship and storytelling, so important. What are you telling your mentees, or what do you hope to show to your mentees?
I think as far as mentorship goes, I feel like it's my responsibility to create space, really, to help them as far as to know that they can turn to me as far as looking for advice or looking for help and answering any questions that they have. We talked about demystifying what curating is. I think the more people, especially the more young people that know what a curator is, the better. I want this field to continue for decades and decades and decades. So. And I think also just reminding them that at the end of the day, it's like we are here and doing this work because we are interested in and love art. And so that's something that I have to remind myself. It's like I'm not just doing admin and spreadsheets and timelines. It's like I want to engage with the art objects. Like that's the name of the game.
Nothing wrong with spreadsheets. We love.
Nothing. Yes,
we love everybody who works with the spreadsheets.
We love it. Yes.
We love our spreadsheets.
Yes.
It keeps me together.
It does. It does. It does.
And then I wanted to give you the opportunity to have the final word here. What do you hope that people can take away from your words tonight? Take away from your career, but also your passions and the storytelling you're doing?
I think that I hope people realize that this is a field and that museums are institutions that are for them. I think that institutions can feel kind of daunting, especially if you're not used to seeing yourself in those spaces. So I would hope that people recognize that museums they're ultimately a public service, so they're for the public, and that more people just come to the museum and come into these institutions because they're there for them. Yeah.
And you bring up an interesting point, and is that representation matters so much. How much of that do you feel that weight is on your shoulders to make sure people that look like you, people that look like me, people that look like everybody in the audience is represented in your collections?
Yeah, I think, museums have been making strides towards diversifying their collections and to reflect the communities that they aim to serve. But it's something that I'm always kind of conscious of, but I try not to continually operate out of that space just because I want to be able to do my job freely and well in the same way that anybody else would. So it's kind of a balancing act of, you know, I recognize that I am one of the only kind of Black women that's working within this space at the institution that I work at, but I just try to do my work to the best of my own abilities. Yeah.
Profound. Well, I want to take this time to open it up to audience and see if anyone has any questions for Camille Brown. It looks like we already have one person.
This is great. Thank you for your question. Thank you for your question. I wanted to ask you, at this point in your career, how would you define the art of curation?
How would I define the art of curation?
Specifically for this point in time, you're saying,
At this point in your career,
oh, gotcha.
assuming it may change as you
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately I would define it as a form of storytelling. It's each exhibition comes from a specific idea, whether it's to introduce an audience to one specific artist, whether it's to get them to consider different themes using a variety of artworks. But I think that's the simplest way that I would define it, as a way to tell a story using visual art.
Had one more over here.
First of all, poor Terra Carve was wonderful.
Oh, you saw it. Thank you.
Exhibition.
Thanks.
Really enjoyed it. And I'm curious, you mentioned that part of your job is conceptualizing these exhibitions. And I'm wondering how that idea to focus on materiality came up, and how does the title Poor Terra Carve get selected?
Yeah.
A little more about that process.
So do we give you credit for Poor Terra Carve, the title of the collection?
Exactly.
Super important.
No, that's a
Yeah,
good question. And no, you can't give me credit for it. That was our marketing and communications team who helped with that one. But I get ideas for exhibitions from different places at different times. And so I think I was in Los Angeles and I saw an exhibition I saw a talk at the Museum of Contemporary Art in LA, and the artist was just talking about materiality and her relationship with the materials that she uses to create work. And it was just something that stuck with me, and that was maybe like 5 or 6 years before the exhibition. I'll get an idea from a movie, I get ideas from going to other museums. Sometimes I'll just come across an artist and I'll just write down their name. So it's kind of, I pull from different places, but I have like an idea dump list that I just sort of put all those things on and can kind of pull from them when the time arises. Yeah.
Good question. I have a question now. I'm very curious. As a curator, do you ever go home like, I want to create my own art?
Oh, some do. I don't. No. Yeah, some do.
Just
I don't.
curious.
No. Yeah, I don't. For me, the way that I can express myself comes through writing primarily. But
That's art.
yes, it is. It
Yes.
is. But
Yes.
as far as kind of putting paint to an easel, nobody
Not
wants
yet.
to see that. Yes. Maybe one day.
People want to see it. I'm
Maybe
sure.
one day.
I'm sure. Any other questions? Yep.
I'm curious, did you know any curators when you were a child? Like this career that you're finding yourself in, it would never have occurred to me, and I love art history and so on. So I'm just so curious how you were introduced to this idea of being a curator.
Yeah, I did not know any curate. I had never met a curator when I decided I wanted to be one, actually, which is, now that I'm thinking about that, a very interesting choice to make. But it was really that experience interning at a museum and meeting with, I guess I shouldn't say that, it was a history museum, and so there was a curator of that material. But it wasn't until that experience that I learned about museum work. So it wasn't something that I was really all that exposed to. I was not, as I mentioned, I was not a huge museum kid growing up. It was something that I came to later in life, but I came to it nonetheless. So.
Hi, I was wondering, could you speak more about your experience in your master's program?
Can you,
I
in
don't-
my what program? I'm sorry.
Master's.
Master's,
program.
okay.
I graduated college a year ago, and I was pre-med,
Mm.
and it wasn't until I had an internship at an art gallery was where I realized I wanted to be a curator. And I did have a curatorial internship at the Brooklyn Museum, but I'm kind of like in a weird spot right now, just trying to figure out what's next, like if I want to get my master's or I don't know, just go a different route. So I'm interested to see like what your experience is or was during your master's program.
So pursuing a master's in art and what that process was like.
So, like you, my undergraduate degree was not in art history. I think a lot of curators, or most of the curators that I meet, it's art history undergrad, art history master's, maybe art history PhD. That was not my experience. I found my master's program to be absolutely amazing. For me, the ability to, and the space to kind of study and work and live in New York was something that has been, that really impacted me and was really, really meaningful. All the internships that I took were really coming from that program. But I found it really, really interesting. And I think for me, a big part of that was working with the cohort that I was with and the other young people that were interested in pursuing careers in the arts and sort of developing those relationships that I still have to this day. A number of my friends are working in museums. A lot of them are in development and fundraising, which I love. But yeah, I found it to be really, really enriching. But I didn't go back to graduate school until after, directly from undergrad. I worked for like 2 to 3 years as well. So if you need space, take that space.
I've noticed in the series that not everyone has a straight path. Sometimes it's a winding road and you end up where you are through different experiences through life. So to that question, thank you so much for that question. It's not always you major in this and you go right after undergrad and you're in that career. Sometimes life has a funny way of taking us through ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
And you know, one street can take you somewhere like, you know what, I don't think I want to go there. I'll go back over here. So very interesting to notice that and inspiring to other people who are interested in your path as well. Any other questions?
Hey, Camille.
Hi.
In your research and in your travel, who are you excited about right now, and who should we all go home and look up?
Oh, really good question.
Goodness.
That's an on-the-spot question. So who are you looking into? I love on-the-spot questions, by the way.
Yeah.
Who should we be looking into?
Oh,
You're a
goodness.
tastemaker tonight.
I'm trying to think. I think maybe I'll pull some artists from the Phillips's collection. There's an upcoming exhibition that I'm not curating, but is being curated by a colleague of mine, titled Vivian Brown, My Kind of Protest. Vivian Brown was an artist working in the 60s and 70s, and so her work is absolutely amazing. There's an artist named Dingda McCannon who's based in Philly. Her work, she works a lot with textiles, really, really interesting work. Joyce Wellman, she's an artist that's based here in Washington, D.C. Nice. The Phillips has recently acquired a number of her works. I think she's spectacular, and she'll be included in the exhibition that I'm curating. So I gave you 3.
Not bad. Not bad. I know we had some questions on this side of the room. Yeah.
I love that you spoke about the importance of experiencing many fields within the area in which you want to work, which made me immediately think about mentorship, which you did speak to, and how important that is. And I think a lot of times, especially if you're a minority, you may not have the exposure experience to know how important it is and how to mentor in almost any area that can help you along the way. And so you spoke about that. So then my next question I guess I have is, what makes for a great curator? So if you're interested in doing that, what are the traits that you think make someone in this job great?
Do you mean more like practical skills or?
If you're interested in doing this, what are the things that you need to know about what would make you great at this job? So if it's just a pipe dream, it may not be, you may follow that path and realize this isn't me at all. You know, like I started out an accounting major and realized, what am I doing? This is not mine. So that's
Are there some things that people have a natural knack in and you're like, you know what, they will make a good curator?
I don't know. I don't know if, I think for me, what makes a great curator? I think it is about having a deep appreciation and love for art. I think it's having a real interest in artists and learning about them and learning their stories. I think it's about, I think it takes being interested in a variety of different stories from artists who are like you, but artists who are nothing like you. So a lot of, I also think curiosity is a big part of it, being curious to learn more about different artists or different techniques. All of those things, I think, go into being a good curator.
In DC especially, I know I've heard a million times, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Is that true in your field as well?
I mean, I think that for me, as far as having a network of other curators or young arts professionals, it feels more, it feels more helpful as far as feeling like you have some sort of support system more than anything. In a lot of ways, curating is, or it can be if you're curating by yourself, like a very independent, kind of isolated act, and developing your own curatorial practice can be very, it's a very individualistic kind of a situation. But I think for me, being able to talk with other young arts professionals and learning about their experiences or hearing about the projects that they're working on, it just sort of like expands your understanding of the field and what's happening around you.
Understood. And I know we had one more question over here. Yep.
I wanted to know, what are some qualities or characteristics that you look forward to exhibit as a curator?
As far as like artwork or artists?
Both.
I mean, I don't think that I am looking for one specific thing when I'm looking into an artist or when I'm looking at a work of art. A lot of that connection or relationship, it's because art is so subjective. What moves me may not move you, not move you. So a lot of that is, I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to say, oh, I'm looking for landscapes made using this kind of material. It's not as formulaic. It's more about kind of a feeling of wanting to learn more about something, wanting to learn more and see more of something. I hope that answers.
Any other questions from the audience for Camille? Oh, we have Essence has a question.
Camille,
Yes.
is there an artist or an art topic that you just would love, if you had all the resources in the world, you would love to do an exhibition around? What's your dream list?
Oh, goodness. Well, I kind of don't want to say in case I do it. I don't think I can answer that, because if I actually want to do it, I don't want anybody to know about it yet. So, but there's so many things. There's so many artists and so many ideas I have rolling around that I hope I can do a tenth of them. You know, I feel lucky.
Also, another curious question. On your weekends or your downtime in DC, do you visit museums, and does a curator look at another curator's work like, I could have done that better? This is an honesty moment. Honesty moment.
Yes.
It's a museum city.
So not usually. I feel like
You can be honest with us.
Yeah. I do go to other museums. It's so interesting because going to museums can start to feel like work because it is part of my work. So I have
That makes
to
sense.
be mindful about going out and seeing the shows that are up around the city. But I usually don't go into a space and think, oh, I could have done that. Yeah, I've never.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I like that about you because I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, I just see a competitor. I'm like, Any other questions? There's been a lot of great questions from the audience. No? Right here? No.
Okay, I just have one last question. What inspires your curatorial framework? Like, I know you mentioned, like, your environment, your family, born in Bowie, but also being raised in Louisiana. Kind of have inspired you. Your parents collecting artwork has essentially inspired you. Do you have anything else that kind of inspires your curatorial framework as a whole?
I mean, you named all of them. I think maybe the other piece would be as far as the way that I approach curatorial work is maybe other curators, like going to exhibitions, seeing the types of stories that they're telling, seeing the kinds of artists that they're highlighting. So I think that is also something that shapes my own practice is learning from other curators about what interests and moves them. Yeah.
Well, Camille, I feel like you have demystified what a curator
hope
does
so.
tonight, honestly and truly, and talking about your passion for storytelling, how you tell a story through a collection, the importance of mentorship, and also just your journey and how you use your background, your family, your culture, where you grew up, and you can put that into art, and the importance of representation. That it matters. It matters. And I so appreciate you sharing this with our wonderful audience. I can go home now and say the work of a curator is officially demystified in my mind. Officially just demystified. Any last words you want to leave with our audience tonight?
No, just thank you for coming. I so appreciate it.
Yeah.
This has been lovely.
This was fantastic. Before we wrap up, I want to quickly ask anybody if anybody has any more questions. I think you've left us speechless. You have left us speechless. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. And if everybody has a program, please pull it out. We have a QR code on the back of the program. It just takes a second. We're going to play some Jeopardy music in between so everybody has time to do it. Fill out a quick survey there just to let us know how you felt about tonight, how amazing Camille is, how mediocre I was. I don't know, whatever you want to put there. Please just take a second and fill out that QR code and that survey for us. We greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.